So I want to talk about the concept of relationship. And I think one important factor, which I've been talking about, is that we should always think about ourselves and how we contribute to the relationship. And if there's a fault in the relationship, we should take it as our responsibility. In other words, we should think, I'm doing something wrong, which is creating a problem in the relationship, or I could be doing something to make the relationship better. So the idea is, if you're dealing with material things, it's very straightforward, because material things don't react to the way you're doing it. They don't have feelings. But when you're dealing with people, then it becomes complicated, because people have feelings. And then when they express their feelings, we may think, well, they shouldn't feel that way. And relationships don't work that way. Relationships work in terms of sensitivity to how people feel. And so you should think, if my wife or my husband's not happy, you should think it's my fault. In most cases, of course, there may be some issues, other issues going on in their life that are making them happy, that are not related to you. But as far as anything related to you, you should think it's my fault, because if I do things better, then they'll be happy. And so this principle that I'm teaching, that I think is extremely important, is to see your husband or see your spouse much like you would see a complicated machine or perhaps complicated software. And don't think that you can understand how to operate the machine without learning or reading the manual. So one way of looking at household life is that if I'm going to get married, or even if I am married now, the job description is to learn how to operate the machine. That's one of the main job descriptions. Okay, I'm living with this machine. Unlike matter, this machine has feelings, this machine has moods, this machine has desires. So I have to know how to operate the machine well. How does the female machine work? How does the male machine work? The male machine works differently than the female machine. And oftentimes men want the female machine to operate like the male machine, but it doesn't, or vice versa. So we should never think, why can't you just be like a man? Or the woman shouldn't think, why can't you just be like a woman? Then we get along better. No, it's just, you have to understand how to interact with that machine. If you don't understand how to interact with that machine, then what happens is the machine doesn't function the way it's supposed to function, or it malfunctions, or it breaks down, or you get injured. Just like if you're using a table saw, you have to be careful. Or a jigsaw, electric jigsaw, you could cut yourself. So now, interesting, if you understand this principle, this is really important. Because if you understand this principle, then when your husband or wife does something which, according to you, is a little strange, because the opposite sex sometimes seems strange in how they do things, instead of saying it's strange, you just say, that's special. There's a better word. You're very special. You're unique, you're special, because you do things differently than I do. If you say it's weird, that word weird has a connotation like there's something wrong with you, you're not normal, and again, the connotation is you should be like me. But a woman should not be like a man. If a woman were supposed to be like men, then God would have created them like men, but He didn't. He created them like women. So one of the secrets, which is really not a secret, but men are a little dull, so this has become a secret for them. The best way to understand how to operate the machine is to ask the machine, how do you operate? And also to observe, when you're using the machine, how you get a good result and when you get a bad result. Because then you understand, when I operate the machine in a particular way, I get certain results. Now, you can't always know how to operate the machine, and sometimes your spouse will expect you to know, but spouses don't expect your spouse to know. You're going to have to tell them how your machine operates. So, gentlemen, if you want to know how to fulfill the needs or how to operate your wife's machine, just ask her. But oftentimes, most times, you don't really have to ask women because they'll tell you. But the problem is, men normally don't listen because what the wife's saying, it often sounds unreasonable. It doesn't make sense to the man. Why would you say that? Or why would you feel this way? It can seem illogical according to a man's mind. So sometimes it just goes right over his head. It doesn't register, or it's not interesting enough for him, or he thinks it's not important, or it's just a mood she's going through, or something like that. But key information comes when your wife says, when you do this, it upsets me. She's saying, this is how the machine works. If you do this, then the machine works well. Then the machine serves you, the machine is happy, the machine is kind to you, we have a good relationship. But if you do this, the machine doesn't work, and then we have problems. So my advice to men is ask your wife how the machine works. And of course listen when she tells you and make note of it. Or when you haven't asked but she's telling you, listen, because she's giving you the operating instructions of the machine. And she's also giving you the job description as a husband. Now, if you don't like doing this, it's too late. You shouldn't have gotten married. Maybe you didn't understand this before you're married, that this was your job description, but whose fault is that? That's only your fault. And so blame yourself for not understanding your job description. You got hired for the job. She's giving you the job description. This is what I need. And a lot of what she's giving you is personal about her, and much of what she's giving you is also general, that all women will feel that way. So that's important, and similarly for women. Women, how will you understand how a man's mind works, how his nature is, how his body is? Well, a great way to understand is just ask him, because you won't. I think there's some things about men that women could not believe in their wildest imagination, that men think that way, or view the world in that particular way, or respond in a particular way, because it won't make sense to them. Same thing for men in the way women react or see things. So what I find is important is that if you understand something about how women act and how men act, then you can be accepting of that behavior. Otherwise, it can be very irritating, upsetting. You want to change it, you become intolerant. Why are women like this? Why do they always have to be this way? And so on. And then it makes life at home, it can make life at home very upsetting. And you could always be fighting and arguing, and oftentimes just fighting and arguing over something as simple as, this is just how women do things. And this is how men do things. Now, I'm not saying that if a man is doing something wrong, or a woman is doing something wrong, that we should just be unlimitedly tolerant and suffer. But I'm saying when men are doing what men do, what women are doing what women do, if we understand it, then we can easily accept it and just say that that's how they think, that's how they do it. And it makes life much easier, because then you don't spend the rest of your life either tolerating or trying to change or being upset by the way they think. Why do you always have to think like that? Why do you always have to do that? What's wrong with you? Why can't you just do it this way? No, that's just the way women do it. Now there's another aspect to this, and that is the aspect of personality. And it's a similar discussion. We have different personality types, and so we react differently in different situations based on our personality. And everyone has a personality type which is hardwired. It doesn't mean that they have to be entirely conditioned by it, but it's hardwired. That's their basic operating paradigm. And they can adjust their operating paradigm, even if it's hardwired, if they understand the paradigm and they understand that it's negatively affecting other people. But if you understand that aside from the womanly and the manly nature, there's also the personality type, where a man and a woman may have similar personality types or the same personality type. And recognizing personality types is very important, because then, again, you can be accepting and say, well, that's just the way my husband is. This is his personality type. He sees things this way. And then you learn to be accepting of that, because you understand it's not consciously he's trying to upset you, or consciously he's doing things that just seem really that people shouldn't do. No, it's just his operating paradigm. That's how he works. So I think the big key word here is accepting. So as I was saying before, instead of saying you're weird, or my husband's weird, or my wife is weird, you just say they're special. This is how they are. It's just... Now, of course, someone will say, but what if how they are totally drives me crazy? Well, that was something for you to figure out before you got married. Now we're dealing with another situation here. You didn't know that, you didn't observe that, you didn't think about that, so it just means more work on your part. But we say one of the principles is don't ask, did I marry the right person, but ask how I can love the person I married. And so again, it goes back to the other principle of you work on yourself and you do the best you can. And if you are what a woman wants and needs, or women who are what a man wants and needs, that changes them. That's an important principle we've taught. And it's foundational, it's fundamental. There's another principle where someone would question, but if I change, does that guarantee the other person will change? And wouldn't it be better if we both work on the relationship? And the answer to both those questions is yes. If you take two chemicals, you take two elements like hydrogen and oxygen, two atoms of hydrogen, one of oxygen, you get water. If you have one atom of hydrogen and one of oxygen, I think you get ozone. So you get something different. So you change one of the elements, you didn't have to change both, you get a different outcome. So there will be a different outcome if you change. And hopefully and eventually your spouse will also be willing to change. At least if you change, there's a good chance it's going to affect them in some way. And at least you're doing what's right. And that's the best you can do. So let's look at a way a man has to adjust his nature to the woman's nature. So man, by nature, is independent. And so they can function quite well on their own. Especially if they've been trained. I mean, if they're mama's boy, then they're hopeless. But if they've been trained well, then men, they can function, they can take care of themselves, they can function. And not that women can't, but men can be happy doing that. But when a man deals with a woman, they have to deal according to the woman's needs. Because a woman's nature is to be more dependent. So men have to know that, and so men have to interrelate. They can't be too independent. And most men don't understand this, but they need to know it, and they need to know this is part of what it means to be a man in relation to a woman. Otherwise, as we're saying, a lot of men are like big kids. You know, they don't act independently. They don't take care of themselves, and they can't take care of their wives. But they expect their wives to be like their mother and take care of them. But men who are stronger or men who are more independent, they're not like this. So independence is, we always say a woman shouldn't be independent, but a man should be, because that way he can take well care of the dependent woman. But if the woman becomes independent and a man's dependent, it's a little awkward. And the woman won't be happy that way. And then you don't really have a conjugal relationship. The wife becomes the mother. And that's, I mean, so many women end up with men who they have to take care of, like their kids. And there's sometimes reasons for that, where a woman kind of takes compassion on the poor guy and marries him. But it doesn't usually work out. At least they're not happy with that. Then she's taking care of the husband like one of the kids in the house. And then he becomes like the kids. He becomes very self-centered. So Anyway, that's a problem with some men. So ladies, watch out. You want to marry a man who's very independent. Not independent of you, but who can take care of himself. Who is not overly self-centered. And it's a real problem because a man, part of what it means to be a man is to not be self-centered. And mama's boys tend to be self-centered because mama put them in the center, and so it's always about them. That's why we say they're like big kids. So you don't really want to marry a big kid. And if you are a big kid, you want to become a man. You want to become more self-sufficient. Take care of yourself, take care of your wife, take care of the kids, take care of the family, and understand that your wife functions being dependent on you, so don't be independent of her. Another aspect of what the man does is he provides, he's the provider, and the woman is it's like the man provides the home, but the woman, she makes the home nice. So that's more of a male position, to provide, facilitate. And then the woman creates the environment for the experience, because the women are more about experience. They say that, like, well, it's not a good example, but they say like two men could go fishing all day and not even talk to one another. But women will watch television. While they're watching the show, they'll talk to one another. So women are about interrelation. They're about experiencing. And so men should provide situations where they can have an experience that they want. And but that goes with the male mentality, because men like to get things done. So he'll, fix things, make things nice, and then she'll decorate them. Like if a machine doesn't work, the man will fix it. But the woman's only interested in the machine according to what she can get from it, the experience that makes her life easier or whatever. Another example, like men are into accomplishment. So when you go on a trip, the men are more into how fast we can get there. And the women are more about the experience of getting there. So to them, it doesn't matter if 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. They'll stop, go eat, stop in a park, take a little time, go shopping. It's about the experience of being together that's important. So men need to understand that and facilitate the experience, make the experience nice for them. So if you're just trying to get somewhere really fast, it's not exactly what the woman wants to experience. Another example, you get some curtains, right? So the woman is about how beautiful they look, and the man is like, let's get them hung. He's about doing. She's more about feeling than the doing part. But she always wants her husband to interact with her, so she'll say, aren't the curtains beautiful? And he'll say, yeah, whatever you say. That's not really what she wants. He's like, let's just get them up, yeah, they look great. She wants interaction, because that's what women will do. So, of course it's hard for men, they're not always like that. But at least they need to understand that these are the kind of things that their wife wants or needs, so they should try to give it. There's another funny thing about women wanting an experience, which is different from men. Let's say you got a pen from a friend, and then the relationship breaks down. And so now that pen reminds you of that person. And a man, he won't even think about it, but a woman, she might even throw that pen away. The man says, it's a good pen, let's use it. And the men, they just want results, and they're willing to put up with a lot to get it. But the women are more about the relationship and the experience. And so men would tend to be more mechanical. In other words, well, let me just figure this out, do it the right way, say the right things. So if they figure, okay, this is what the wife needs and so on, and then they do all the right things and they say all the right things, but if they're not in the right mood, then it doesn't communicate to the woman. So, they did all the right things, but they were just doing it for the wrong reason, or they weren't in the mood that she was in. So these things are hard for men, because men don't naturally think this way. And so if you're married to a woman, you have to try to understand these things. And that's just what it means. Men, whether you like it or not. And a lot of times women will think men are boring or the marriage is boring, which usually means the man is boring because he doesn't know how to relate well in the relationship. So there's more than mechanics, and that's why it's difficult for men. But men, you have to make huge efforts to do this. You have to be very personal. You have to do things according to a woman's needs. And that's what it actually means to be a man. Man in relation to a woman means fulfilling the needs of the woman. That's the idea. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is feminine and what is masculine, and we've talked about this. And there's a nature which is considered feminine, there's a nature which is considered masculine. And the masculine nature we talked about last week is to provide for the women, facilitate the woman, to make her happy. But if he becomes too stubborn and too self-centered, then he's acting more from the feminine side. So it doesn't work then, and there's conflict. So masculine means go along with the mood of the women. And this sounds really funny, because we never hear, men, you should be submissive to your wife. We always hear, woman, you should be submissive to your husband. But the fact is, it works both ways. And I know that it sounds funny, but it's just the way it is. Now, when I say these things, some people are going to throw pies in my face. But I'd like people to look at it more, people are going to say, is that Vedic, or that's not Vedic, or that's not what Prabhupada said. Let's hold on a second before you get that pie out of the fridge. This is just, one thing I think is important to understand is that this is how things are. It's not a question of Vedic, not Vedic, what Prabhupada said or not. It's a question of how relationships work, how male-female psychology works. It's just the way it is. And you go to Bhagavatam, Kardama Muni, he was very, you could say, submissive to his wife, because she was very submissive to him. He was submissive to her, and so that it works together. He did everything to satisfy her, because she made so many sacrifices by living austerely with him for so many years. So in so many ways, men are submissive, but not submissive as a weakness, but actually submissive as a strength, because it's actually a weakness to go against the desires of your wife if the desires are, unless they're wrong or bad, it's a weakness. It's a form of not being self-controlled. Then you argue with your wife, and that's a weakness. So submissiveness is actually a strength, because you're willing to satisfy her according to her needs. And that's not easy. It's very easy to get angry. It's easy to tell her she's stupid. Any idiot can do that, and they do. But for a man to be able to fulfill the emotional needs of his wife, to be sensitive, to create an environment in which she trusts him, she can open up to him, that's much more difficult than just getting upset and being intolerant. So the concept of, we say, submissive should not be seen as weakness, it should be seen as a strength. Of course, all the men are saying, I could never do that, I'd never want to do that. If I did that, all the guys would laugh at me. Maybe they would laugh at you, but all those guys that laugh at you probably have horrible marriages. And the guys who have good marriages, have good marriages because this is what they're doing, and they won't laugh at you, and they'll go, "You're smart. You finally got it. It took you a long time, but you finally got it." And we have the joke of "Mama's not happy, nobody's happy." But from the Krishna conscious point of view, from the spiritual point of view, is there anything wrong with making another devotee happy? Of course not. Is there anything wrong with being in control of another devotee? Especially if you're overly demanding and inflexible, and it's not really your position to do that, which is not the position of a husband. Yeah, there is something wrong with that. So let's look at it from another point of view, and some of this is review, but I think it's important because I may have not discussed these issues at length. Prabhupada gives the example that he used to walk with his father, and when he was holding his father's hand, he felt very proud and he could challenge anybody. Or we'll give the example of a stray dog. He's very fearful, but if a stray dog's with his master, then he feels very powerful. He can bark at anybody. So, not to compare women to a child or a dog, but a woman with a good man is very self-confident. And there's the saying, behind every good man is a woman, behind every good woman there's a man. Men get a lot of confidence from their wives, women get a lot from their husband. But, some of women, they say, well, that seems demeaning, or that's just a macho attitude. But in terms of psychology, at least we see the opposite, that a man has great power to destroy a woman's sense of self if he demeans her. Of course, you could say, if anyone's being demeaned constantly, that would destroy their sense of self-worth. But even more so for women. And men, it's very bad if you do this. You should always be uplifting, encouraging, and show affection, because that will give your wife, she'll become powerful, she'll be happy, she'll be self-confident. So, you might see that sometimes a woman gets married who has these qualities, and then her husband degrades her by his sarcasm, by his being critical of her, by telling her she's not good, she's stupid, she's this and that. That's not the job of a husband, and that those husbands are doing great harm. And then such husbands also tend to do that to the children, and then children grow up really emotionally destroyed. So that's very important. Now, Shastra says, in terms of dealing with a woman, Shastra says, don't ever become angry with a woman. Because women are meant to be protected. Anyone that you're meant to protect, you shouldn't become angry with, correct? So, and plus we say, it's funny, but it's true, we say you never win a fight, never win an argument with a woman. So men, it's foolish to try to fight with a woman. If a woman is upset, if she's angry, you take a humble position. Again, the men will think, no, but then I'm being controlled by my wife, I'm being weak. No, humility is not a weakness. And then you pacify her through humility. Don't chastise her, don't become upset. You go along with her, and some man will say, yeah, but my wife is this, my wife is that. So your position as the husband is to help her deal with that. Because if you are meant to be the strong, independent man who's supposed to protect the woman, who's more dependent, part of the aspect of protection is to not become upset when she's upset, not become fickle if she's fickle, not become emotional if she's emotional, but not become impatient and say, why are you so emotional? Why are you this or that? Then you're also just being like her. And so what's your claim to fame now? Of being the great, powerful man. So it's an important principle to understand. So sometimes it's hard for a woman to admit they're wrong, and that can be frustrating to a man. But if you're kind and sensitive to them, then you can discuss it and say, I understand what you're saying, I know how you feel, and this is what I think, and I don't completely agree with what you're saying. And you talk about it. And women tend to respond to sensitivity and kindness and affection. And getting angry is anything but kindness and affection. So men, you need to understand this. And then if you respond with kindness and affection, you'll find that oftentimes that is all they really want anyway, and being right is not that important as getting the affection of their husband. Let's say your wife's unreasonable. She says something that's unreasonable, does something that's unreasonable. Same principle. Just be there to help them, be there to be a mouthpiece, be there to guide them with a lot of tolerance, and don't become upset. Becoming upset is just not good. I've read in some books, they say, well, if a husband and wife don't fight, it means they're not expressing themselves. I think that might be for people in the mode of ignorance. But you don't have to express yourself with fighting. It's not really a sattvic way to deal with the world, fighting. You can express yourself, you can express your needs, but fighting, that's not really spiritual. Another thing for men, sometimes other men will tell you how they deal with their wife. And then you get brainwashed and you try to apply it to your wife. And if what they're saying in principle is good, that's fine. But in detail, you may have to apply it differently. What to speak of what they're saying in principle is wrong. So don't get brainwashed by a bad husband. And if the husband is good and he's telling you how to act, just keep in mind that there's a principle operating, and the details of the principle will need to be adjusted according to your particular situation. Now, here's something interesting. In spiritual circles, especially Gaudiya Vaishnava circles, there's an understanding, or we could call it a belief, because Prabhupada didn't entirely support it as we may support it, that women are less intelligent, although I think many men don't really understand what that means. Of course, when Prabhupada was asked this by a woman, are women less intelligent? He said, yes, if you think you're a woman, you're less intelligent. But it doesn't mean women are not clever. It doesn't mean women are not smart. There's plenty of smart women, scientists, doctors, lawyers, business people. We're way smarter than men. So that's not what was meant by that. In fact, Chanakya Pandit said that they're, what did he say, 2, 4, 6, 8? They're 4 times more cunning, which means they're just better able to manipulate material energy. So we should never think less intelligent means practically, materially, you as a man are smarter. Because any man who's married will see that his wife in many ways is smarter than him. So they have less intelligence means theoretical intelligence. It means intelligence which discriminates matter from spirit. It means intelligence which can operate without any emotion. And a woman's intelligence does not operate without emotion. So when applying it purely spiritually, a man will have an advantage, but it doesn't mean to say that every man has an advantage over women. It's general. Of course, there are many men who don't have any intelligence spiritually, so understand that. You will find your wife's very smart, very intelligent in many, many ways. And don't think this less intelligent is all pervasive, and that means all men are super geniuses and all women don't know anything. That would be foolish to think that way. They are different. Their needs are different. Their desires are different. They appreciate material things generally more so than men, many times more. That's what Chanakya Pandit means. They, have a stronger need for clothes, for jewelry, these kinds of things. They appreciate good food very much. It's more important to them than men. These kinds of things. So we recognize these things, we accept it. And we don't think that woman's nature is a fault. We just accept this is what it is. Just like a lemon is sour, but it doesn't mean that's a fault. It's just the way it is. So you use a lemon, and I put lemon in my dal. It's really nice. And we make lemonade, and you can make lemon rice. So just because a lemon's sour doesn't mean there's anything wrong with a lemon. You have to know how to use it. So you have to know how to deal with that nature. Many men, unfortunately, don't know how, because they didn't take my class or they didn't come to my seminar. Shame on them. They didn't get authorized as bona fide husbands, or bona fide husbands to be. So, we're talking here about the masculine, what's called the masculine principle, what it means to be masculine. And in relation to a woman, what it needs to be masculine, to go over this a little more, is that the man acts according to the need of the woman. So like, the male is the subject, the woman is the object. So the man performs action according to what the woman wants. That makes you a man. Again, it doesn't make you emaciated. It doesn't make you feminine, not emaciated. What's the word I'm looking for? Emasculated? Is that a word? We'll use that word. There's a word I'm looking for, I can't remember. Let's use the word emasculated. If it's not a word, it is now. Perfectly good word. It makes you emasculated. It doesn't make you emasculated. If a man is smart, if he's intelligent, this is what he'll do. Now, some people will say, no, this is all feminist brainwashing. No, this is just smart. This is just how things work. If you try to say, no, women, they want to be men and they have you controlled. No. It's not woman's nature to want to be a man. They only want to be a man if there's no men around. So if men do the job of men, the women can be women. And then you eliminate, you say, this is funny. You can eliminate feminism by men fulfilling the needs of the women. That's how you eliminate it. Man performs the actions according to what the woman wants. That will eliminate feminism. Most men don't understand that. They think, no, you have to be the boss and take charge and tell her what to do, keep her in line. She gets out of line, give her a good beating, and so, it doesn't work that way. If you act like a man, the woman's satisfied. If you act like a woman, she's not satisfied. And then she starts acting like a man. If you think of her needs, she'll think of your needs. If your wife or a woman feels this need to be like a man, that means it's a fault of the husband. Because if he makes her feel comfortable in their identity as a woman, makes them feel secure as a woman, by helping her with her problems and listening and sorting out whatever needs to be sorted out, then they can just be women and be happy and everything's fine. But so, this whole feminism, we talked about in the first classes, this whole problem of feminism came because there were no men around. So then the women were forced to be men. So, I'm going to talk just for a minute about a real brahmachari. We were saying men are independent, so a real brahmachari is independent, right? So he doesn't need anything from women, he has nothing to gain from women. And so he can deal with them very nicely because he doesn't need anything from them. And a man who says, I don't need woman, but really he does, those are the men that don't treat women well. So a real brahmachari, he can deal with women, not deal with women. It doesn't matter. So he's always dealing with them nicely. And women naturally respect this kind of man. But the man who says he doesn't need a woman but actually does, well, women won't respect that man, especially if he's dressed as a brahmachari. So it's a similar idea that man is independent, and then when he's independent he can interact well with a woman. Take care of her needs if he needs to, but he's not, if he's a brahmachari, he's not dependent, doesn't need her to take care of him. He's independent. That's brahmachari. He doesn't need to think about how bad they are. That's not brahmachari. He doesn't need to think about how he's never going to get married. That's not brahmachari. That means, all these men talk about women this, women that, and I say, why don't you stop talking about women? You're always saying women are bad, this and that, but all you're doing is talking about them. It doesn't make sense. So that means they're disturbed. That's not brahmachari. So a woman wants a man to be considerate. In our movement, sometimes the men do not consider the needs of the women. They get put in the back of the line, or they have to take the bus, or the men get the car. That's not actually the way men are supposed to be. Men are supposed to say, I'll take the bus, you take the car. We served all the sabji to the men, there's nothing left for the women. I was in a temple, we would line up for prasadam, and the women would have to go in the back. The Prabhupada said the women should go in front. So it's a symptom of a misunderstanding of what it means to be a man. If you're a real man, then you facilitate the women. You don't spit on them and push them away. So the key word here is considerate. Just be considerate. That's your job. That's a job description for you guys. Okay, the last thing I want to explain in this set, we're going to do another class on principles, is that you can't use your position in the material world to deal with others or to deal with your family. You have to deal with your mother, your wife, your sister, not as who you are on the job, you're the CEO, but when you come home, you're the husband, or you're the wife, or you're the mother, you're the father. So it's all about relationship and what is expected within the relationship. So don't use your position externally to say, listen, you should do whatever I say because I'm the CEO of Microsoft. No, you deal considerately. Okay, so now I want to talk about the concept of the husband as guru, because this is there in the Shastra and this comes up a lot. So I want to make some points, and I've written an article on it, and I'll go over the main points in the article, and that article will be available somewhere. You can look on my website, it's not up there yet. So, the reason I'm saying this is because, okay, it's not exactly that we're saying, I'm the president or CEO of Microsoft, so I can deal that way with my family, but a similar idea is saying the husband is the guru of the family. So what's interesting about this is that when you say the husband is a guru, then men get all these conceptions of autocracy. And I think I mentioned this once, and a disciple asked Prabhupada, he said, should the wife do whatever the husband asks? And it seems like, according to Shastra, yes, but Prabhupada said, you should be so arrogant that you would think like that. So it's when Prabhupada says, or Shastra says, husband is guru, that's not exactly what it means. It means guru means leader. You lead the family back to Godhead. And so if you want a wife to follow you, you have to be going somewhere which is worthy to be going, to be followed. Right? And so that's the basic principle of husband as guru. But now if we look a little further, interesting concept is, how could the husband actually be a guru when the guru relationship is on reverence and the husband-wife relationship is predominated more by friendship and a conjugal relationship? Of course there's some on reverence, but It's in the background, it's not in the foreground. And in the foreground of guru-disciple relationship is on reverence. So it can't exactly be that way. And what is the context of husband as guru? Context is in Vedic times, women did not get diksha. The boys went to Gurukul, they got training from the guru, and so that is how the woman got her training. Today, that's not how women get their training. They have equal opportunity for training as the men. They have access to all the same teachers as the men have. So the situation's different. So we have to understand it in the present context. Now, some other aspects of guru, which I think are important, is that even Prabhupada, who was the pure devotee descended to spread Krishna consciousness, did not push his disciples to the breaking point and told his disciples, his leaders, don't push anyone to the breaking point. So it's not, being husband as guru is not a right to do and say whatever you want and expect that the wife is going to jump, because even that doesn't happen with a guru. And a guru is sensitive to the needs of his disciples, and so he'll push the disciple, but not to the point of breaking. So that's important. What else is important? Service. The guru is serving the disciple. Prabhupada said, I see my disciples. It's actually my spiritual master. I'm meant to serve them. So Prabhupada saw himself as a servant. And why did everybody surrender to Prabhupada? Because he was serving them and loving them. So this goes back to this point. The guru loves the disciples, just as we're saying the husband should love the wife, and then the wife will be submissive and serve him naturally. So it's the same principle going on here. That you serve, as a husband guru, you serve. And out of affection that you have, your wife also has that affection for you. Now, one thing I've found is that men will think, but isn't it my responsibility to guide them in Krishna consciousness, so shouldn't I instruct them? Shouldn't I make sure that they're acting properly? And so in that sense, don't I have the right to give all these instructions about their spiritual life? You have the right, but you have to be aware of the relationship. So if your wife doesn't appreciate it, and she gets her inspiration in other places, then understand that when women get married, they're looking for more than a guru. They're looking for a relationship, friendship, understanding, and if you're being insensitive, and you should do this, you should get up at this time, etc., because I know what's right for you, and you have to do that in the right way, and if that's not what they want, then you just have to work with the relationship that way. Otherwise, you just end up with this horrible relationship. Well, my wife won't listen to me, so I'm not going to talk to her. Just in the last 2 days, I heard 2 different people tell me that their parents don't even talk to one another. Both Indian parents. It's an interesting paradigm of a marriage that ends up to the point where people don't even talk to one another. Of course, in America, they would just get divorced if it came to that point. But we don't want to end up with marriages like that. It's not really what Krishna consciousness is all about, unless, as I said, you come to the point where, okay, we don't need one another, let's move forward in our lives. We agree that it would be best to move forward. The kids are grown up. Okay, that's fine. That's would be considered successful if that's how it ended up. But if the whole life you were miserable, by the time you give up, who knows what will happen to you, if you'll actually be renounced or not. So, the point I'm making here is relationship is all important. So, we're going to end class here, and then we're going to talk about some other principles, which you will find interesting. So we'll see you next time. Hare Krishna.